Hailie Deegan will not return to NASCAR in 2025 as she'll go open wheel racing, go to Indiana NXT. We have a Spygate controversy between Joe Gibbs Racing and potentially another organization, and Hendrick Motorsports will not appeal Alex Bowman's disqualification from the Charlotte Roval. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports story discusser today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them trailers really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chase Brisco and Josh Berry's 2024 Texas A&M schemes that we'll see in 2024. Chase Brisco will be sponsored by them this weekend in Las Vegas, and Josh Berry will have them in the season finale. Schemes look so alright in my opinion. I wish they had a different paint scheme for the final race or SHR in the 4 car. I really wish they did, but I think they look really solid. Looking forward to on the racetrack this year. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Bubba Wallace's 2024 Ronald House McDonald's scheme, 50-year scheme that we'll see at Homestead next weekend. I love this scheme. It looks absolutely incredible. McDonald's had a big branding with the organization for the last couple of years. It looks really exciting. Looking forward to on the racetrack at Homestead. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is AJ Allmendinger's 2024 Modern Day Garage scheme that we'll see this weekend at Las Vegas. Scheme's alright in my opinion. Do like the colors, a little bleak in certain instances, but it does look okay. Looking forward to on the racetrack this weekend at Las Vegas. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Joey Logano's 2025 Pennzoil scheme that we'll see in 2025. Honestly, this scheme looks alright in my opinion. There's definitely some different looks to it for sure. Shell looks a little different. I think it's different. It looks kind of simple, but I do like the simplicity. Looking forward to on the racetrack in 2025. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Blaney's 2025 Advanced Auto Parts scheme that we'll see next year. I like this a lot. Very similar to the 2024 scheme, but there's really nothing wrong with it. I think did a really good job on this one, and I'm definitely looking forward to on the racetrack throughout 2025. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Cindric's 2025 Discount Tire scheme that we'll see throughout the 2025 season. I like his discount tire scheme a lot. We've had a lot of good looking Team Penske scenes. This one's no exception. It looks pretty solid. Looking forward to on the racetrack throughout 2025. And a final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jack Wood's 2024 Alpha Vision scheme that we'll see at Martinsville in a couple weeks. Scheme's kind of simplistic in my opinion. I do like the black, I do like the white. It's simplistic, but there's also a little bit of good stuff on it. It looks alright. Looking forward to on the racetrack throughout the final race at Martinsville, or second to last race for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Rey Mysterio and Braun Strowman. As it was reported and announced earlier today that Rey Mysterio and Braun Strowman will be the honorary starters for this weekend's NASCAR Cup Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Both big stars in the WWE. Obviously, it was announced tonight as well. The Cole Custer will be part of the WWE event, I believe, either Thursday or Friday. So you've got correlation between NASCAR and the WWE, which is also continuing to grow in big ways with major changes that have been happening. I think it's really good to both be part of it. I think it's really exciting and really fantastic to see. And I think both are going to bring a lot to it. And I think they'll do a really good job being honorary starters for this weekend at Las Vegas. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Wendys. As it was announced and confirmed earlier today that Wendys will sponsor Shane Van Gisbergen in the NASCAR Cup Series race this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. The brand they're using is Wendys Spicy Chicken. I believe Wendys has sponsored SVG a couple times. They actually sponsored it at the Chicago Street Course. Unfortunately, last time they were on the car, it did not go well. And I believe also they sponsored the Daytona and they had engine issues. So I'm most likely expecting an engine failure or something like that to come around for SVG. I gotta say though, the scheme looks phenomenal. It looks absolutely incredible. I think more experience is really important for SVG, and having Wendys on the car, I think it's a really good looking car in my opinion. I think that Colleague and Trackhouse nailed this one, knocked it out of the park. It looks absolutely incredible, and I think it's awesome the Wendys will sponsor SVG once again this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, one of the bigger underlying stories is Kyle Larson's success so far in 2024. Kyle Larson has won 6 races so far in the 2024 season, which is the most, or tied for the most that anyone's had in a season in the Next Gen era. This is also significant because now he has surpassed Carl Edwards on the all-time wins list, now having his 29th career NASCAR Cup Series win. His next win in the NASCAR Cup Series, which would come this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, it would end up being his 30th career NASCAR Cup Series win. There are only 29 other drivers in NASCAR Cup Series history that have reached that feat, and there's only, I believe, 5 active drivers in Cup right now that have more wins. Kyle Busch does, Denny Hamlin does, Mark Truex Jr., Joey Logano, and Brad Keselowski are the other 5 drivers. Kyle Larson likely has a chance to do it for the end of the year, and there's a great chance he could end the year by having 7 to 8 wins. What Larson's been doing is absolutely amazing. To have a 6-win year so far in 2024 is phenomenal, and I don't think he's going to be done winning throughout the rest of the season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Garrett Smithley. As it was announced yesterday that Garrett Smithley will drive the 45 for Alpha Prime Racing this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Garrett has made select starts so far in 2024 for Alpha Prime Racing. He, of course, had driven for JD Motorsports. Remember, it was announced that JD Motorsports had gone up bankrupt, so obviously he is going over to drive, and basically the 45 team had acquired the 4 points from JD Motorsports. So that's why he's getting this chance and opportunity with Alpha Prime. Alpha Prime's had some solid runs throughout the 2024 season so far, and I do think they'll have an okay run, though the 45 car is a little bit on the lower points standings. That being said, I think he'll have some solid pace and speed. I think he'll have a good chance and opportunity to run maybe inside the top 20 or top 25. We'll see how he ends up doing this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Vargas. As it was confirmed earlier today that Ryan Vargas will drive the 74 for Mike Harmon Racing this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Ryan Vargas has been competing full-time in the NASCAR Euro Series throughout this year, mostly in the number 30 car, but he did have to drive the 11 car this past week. But he's been very solid in the NASCAR Euro Series. He's gotten a couple podiums throughout the year. Ryan also has made select starts in NASCAR Xfinity and I believe Truck Series competition throughout the year, and really hasn't been able to run that great, but hasn't had top-tier equipment. And I think the 74 car is a little bit on the lower position in the owner's points. They have acquired some owner's points to try to get in the events, but they're going to have a really tough time and opportunity. Ryan is a very talented driver, in my opinion, but I'm not expecting him to, unfortunately, set the world on fire. I think he'll probably get a top 30 or top 35, but there's some attrition. I could see him running well. He does sometimes get the best out of equipment. Hopefully, Ryan can have a solid chance and a strong opportunity. Hope he can run really well and do a great job with Mike Harmon Racing this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway with the 74. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chad Finchum. As it was announced earlier today that Chad Finchum will drive the 66 for NBM Motorsports in the NASCAR Cup Series next weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Chad Finchum has made starts for NBM Motorsports over the course of the last 10 years. I believe he's also making his 3rd or 4th Cup Series start in 2024. While I do think Chad Finchum does have some talent, I expect this car to be way off the pace. It was not very good when he drove this car. He had the Arby's car a couple weeks ago, if I remember correctly, at Bristol, and unfortunately, he just struggled immensely. Did not have the pace or speed to contend, and was getting lapped very quickly throughout the event, and went nearly 30 laps down before the end of the event. I don't think he's going to finish 25 to 30 laps down. I expect this to be the slowest car on the racetrack next weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. I hope he can prove me wrong and run really well, but like I said, I'm not really expecting to set the world on fire. I unfortunately think he will not run well, and I think he sadly ends up struggling for sure this weekend, or next weekend, at Homestead Miami Speedway. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Maya Snyder. As it was confirmed by Joseph Strictly from TobyChristie.com that Maya Snyder will drive a 07 for SS Greenlight Racing this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I believe it was either be Maya Snyder's first Xfinity Series start in 2024 or a second start this year. Maya, of course, driven full-time the last couple years in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, actually made select starts with JGR in the number 19 car in 2023, where he had some okay runs, but didn't really run that great. And then a couple years ago, he drove the 31 for Jordan Anderson Racing, before unfortunately being replaced by Parker Redside going into 2023. I think Maya is a talented race car driver. He does have a win in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, driving for RCR back in the 2022 season. But I'm going to be real and honest, it's just been a very up and down career. He's been solid with organizations like Thorsport, got opportunities with Kyle Busch Motorsports and Kyle Busch's organization back in the day, but it really has never panned out for Maya Snyder, sadly, which is a shame because I think Mike is someone who was capable. When you lose your sponsorship and your funding, you lose your opportunities to run up front. And it's a shame because, like I said, I do think he deserves an opportunity to be racing in NASCAR. And I hope he can do really well and try to convince somebody for 2025. We don't know what his plans are yet for the 2025 season, but he could end up being a free agent, which is really unfortunate. I hope Maya Snyder can have a really solid and a really strong run for sure, and maybe get a top 25, maybe even a chance at a top 20 this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Mark Miles. As there was reported by Adam Stern earlier this evening that Mark Miles has officially confirmed to reporters and investors that he says he is still enjoying his role as the CEO of IndyCar and plans to not step down anytime soon, and has confirmed to many people in the industry that he'll be sticking around for the long-term and foreseeable future. If you've been on social media, have been paying attention for a lot of people in the IndyCar world, you would probably guess that and there's been a lot of people been wanting him to be gone being the CEO of IndyCar. Many people believe that Mark Miles, including myself, has not been able to move the needle. Now, yes, he was able to get a race in the streets of Dallas, but there's a lot of controversy around that, considering the fact that you, of course, have the basically Texas Motor Speedway, and I know I've been critical of Texas Motor Speedway in the NASCAR side, but the last IndyCar race about 2 years ago at the track was absolutely amazing and very, very phenomenal. And it's a shame they can't go back there. And then he's had those really blunt comments and not the nicest comments about the Northeast, calling out tracks like Watkins Glen, for example. And those comments absolutely got a lot of frustration. And then people like Pat O'Ward were very disappointed, called out Mark Miles at one point. They have said they're trying to get a race at Mexico City, but they haven't done it. And he keeps talking about adding international race among other things. I feel like that Mark Miles has opened his mouth way too much in certain instances, and it's caused a lot of controversy where it does not need to be. And it's really unfortunate because Mark Miles doesn't seem like a horrible person, but I just feel like he has done not a great job as a CEO. And I feel like he's hurt IndyCar's product. Say what you want to say about Randy Bernard. Randy Bernard was an absolute amazing CEO, and he actually cared about the fans. You barely see Mark Miles out on the racetrack talking to fans. So I feel like that if you're the CEO of the sport, you should be engaging with your fan base and trying to figure out what they want and what problems need to be resolved. It doesn't seem like he's been able to do that, unfortunately, as a CEO, which is why a lot of people have been calling for his job to be gone. I've even called for his job to be gone because I feel like he has not done the best job that he can end up doing. So I really hope that he does a better job going forward in 2025, but I'm going to be realistic and honest with everybody. I'm not expecting much from Mark Miles. I think he is going to continue struggling as a CEO going forward, and maybe down the road he ends up getting fired and they bring someone else in, but I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. But personally, I think they should fire Mark Miles because he's done a very bad job as a CEO in recent years, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Meyer-Shank Racing. As it was announced this morning that Meyer-Shank Racing has officially confirmed their 2025 IMSA driver lineup. They will have 4 full-time drivers throughout the 2025 season, celebrating throughout both cars. So, Tom Blomqvist and Colin Braun are going to drive the number 60 car. Tom Blomqvist, of course, had driven most of the year in IndyCar, losses right about halfway through the year after Road America, I believe, or after Detroit, if I'm not mistaken, and unfortunately lost his ride. But then a lot of people said he was still going to be part of this organization in IMSA, which is very true. And say what you want to say about Tom Blomqvist, he's an absolutely amazing IMSA driver and will be a major threat and contender to win races throughout the year. And Colin Braun, I think, is a fantastic driver. He had a career in NASCAR driving for Roush and RFK back in the day, and he's done a really good job in the IMSA world, and he's going to be threatening to win a championship this year. The 2 drivers joining are Nick Yellowby and Renger van der Zande. Nick Yellowby comes from the BMW factory program from the number 24 car, I believe, and honestly, he did get a win at Indianapolis, I believe, or finished on the top 2 positions with the BMW program. I expect him to set the world on fire in the number 93, and Renger van der Zande has absolutely been amazing. You have a very amazing lineup going into next year, and I do think there's going to be some other drivers. Some have mentioned that Scott Dix and Alice Paul are rumored to be potential candidates to be with this team for the Rolex 24, which isn't a shock considering considering the fact that Shank Racing has formed a technical alliance with Chip Ganassi Racing. So I do think they'll be part of this program, which if you got those guys going over there and Helio Castroneves, who has multiple Rolex 24s and 4 Indy 500 wins, I think you've got a really stout lineup going into next year. I love this lineup they've got. It's very strong. It's super, super competitive, and I expect all the drivers with this organization to be major threats and contenders. I absolutely love and adore this lineup that they've got for the 2025 IMSA season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Team Amervent. As it was announced earlier today that Team Amervent has officially confirmed themselves that they will be making their return to NASCAR in 2025 with the 50 Vets program. They did not announce in their statement today their driver and who will be the crew chief, among other things, and what races they plan to run. But I'd have to imagine the Daytona 500 is one of the races that they'll be looking to run in 2025. Team Amervent, for those of you who don't know, is the former Money Team organization. They, of course, have been around in the sport in recent years. They actually ran in the Coco 600 earlier this year, where they unfortunately kind of struggled throughout the event, and I believe finished in last. Now, Team Amervent, I expect them to probably run around 10 to 12 races next year. I'd have to think they're going to, like I said, run the Daytona 500, considering the Daytona 500 is the biggest event for all open teams and organizations. I'd have to imagine they're going to end up running this race in the 2025 year. I have to think maybe the Brickyard 400, the Coca-Cola 600, and a couple of the races I think they'll run throughout the year. The other big question is who are going to be the drivers or driver. Maybe see someone like Gray Biffle come out of retirement. That could certainly be a possibility. Maybe Matt Benedetto. Matty D at one point had been mentioned for the Money Team a couple years ago, so maybe that's a possibility. Maybe Jeffrey Earnhardt, his name's been brought up as a possibility for this organization to pass. I really don't know at this point. I want to see this team succeed, though, to be honest. I'd love to see more organizations come in, but usually open teams, unless they're part of a big organization, they don't really do great. But there also could be charters available if, of course, 23rd Line Front Row end up losing their charters in the lawsuit, which they're not likely going to, but who knows at this point. I also do believe they're going to be getting engines from ECR and RCR's engines, which, of course, a lot of these open teams like NY Racing have gotten their stuff from ECR in the past. JG Lee, another driver I watch for as a possibility for this team next year as well, by the way. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens, but it looks like Team Amervent is officially coming back to the NASCAR world in 2025. Going to be very interesting and kind of intriguing to see how they end up doing next season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Charlotte Roval TV ratings. As it was reported by Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic that the Charlotte Roval NASCAR Cup race on NBC had a 1.35 rating and 2.42 million viewers. This is the most watched Charlotte Roval race since 2021. And according to Jordan Bianchi, the ratings from this year to last year, we are up 6%, I believe, in the TV ratings and 6% in viewership from last year's playoffs. This is absolutely huge. Nearly 2.5 million people tuned in to the final race of the round of 12. And the playoffs generally have been really good. And I think it's good to see ratings up. And it's going to be very important these ratings continue to be up, considering the fact that next year you're going to see a lot of races on cable. I believe there's only 4 or 5 races that will be on NBC on the full network there. Fox is only going to have 4 or 5 races. And, of course, a lot of races will be on cable, like TNT for their events. And, of course, Amazon on a streaming service. I do think that this is really huge, Joe. And historically, when it comes to road course races, usually road course races do not end up doing very good in the TV's ratings department. And a lot of people probably weren't as excited about this race. And the fact that almost that many people tune in to a road course is really huge. Could this mean that the Charlotte Roval sticks around past 2025? It could certainly mean that as a possibility, but I'm hoping for 2026 that we do get the Charlotte Oval back. I think the Charlotte Oval will actually put on a lot better of a racing product than the Charlotte Roval. I think the Roval race actually this weekend was actually not that bad. I thought the racing was solid despite the fact that Kyle Larson dominated the end of the event. But I do think that the Charlotte Oval could come back or should come back because I do think the racing is going to be a lot better on that type of track. Though again, I hope it does end up coming back in the future. But again, I think this is a major win for NASCAR. There's nothing really to take away from this. I think it's a huge win for NASCAR. We've had a lot of really good ratings throughout the year. We've had double-digit gains in certain areas. And to me, it's really good and great to see that the ratings do continue to increase and go up. Also, having Chase Elliott and some of the big stars competing in the playoffs definitely helps for sure. You know, guys like Kyle Busch, we'll talk about here in a little bit, and Ross Chastain and Bubba Wallace are not in. I think it's been really good to see the ratings up for the playoffs so far in the 2024 season. Really excited to see the ratings continue to be up. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Bubba Pollard. As it was shockingly announced earlier today, that Bubba Pollard will drive the 26th for Sam Hunt Racing in the second to last NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Martinsville. Bubba Pollard is one of the best late model drivers in the country and also made his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut earlier this year at Richmond for Junior Motorsports, driving number 88 car at Richmond. And I believe he got a top 5 finish, either finishing in 4th or 5th place at the end of the day, losing Eric Almirola and Chandler Smith by the end of the race, even though Chandler Smith went on to win. Bubba is going to have a very solid shot and opportunity. He is one of the best short track racers in this country. And every time I see him get behind the wheel of a car, he does an excellent job. And I do think that despite the fact that the 26 car is not as strong as the 88 car was, I actually do think that Bubba Pollard is going to have a solid chance and opportunity to be extremely competitive. Bubba can always get the best out of equipment, and he is a very elite and a very stout driver. So I do believe he is going to be a major threat and contender, at least for a top 10, and maybe he could have a chance and opportunity to go and get the win. Sam Hunt Racing is still looking for their first win in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and I think he's going to do an excellent job. I also love the fact that we're seeing more late model drivers from the Cars Late Model Tour and other late model scenes getting a shot and opportunity. We've seen Connor Hall get an opportunity to drive for McAnally Hilgeman earlier this year at Richmond and did a very good job getting a top 10. We've seen Carson Quaffle now going full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series with Junior Motorsports. Josh Berry came from that scene. And we've all seen other drivers like a Brendan Butterbean Queen, who's rumored to potentially be a candidate for Spire Motorsports in the Truck Series next year. He's done an excellent job in the Cars Tour. I think that we're going to see more of this continue because I think you're going to get a lot more of these late model drivers who've seen the success of Josh Berry and seen the success of drivers like Carson Quaffle, and Connor Hall also might get an opportunity with JRM in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, by the way, next year. But I think it's been amazing to see. It's been absolutely phenomenal and incredible, and it's pretty great and awesome to see that Bubba Pollard is going to get the chance and a strong opportunity to be part of a very strong organization at Martinsville later this season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about IMSA and NASCAR. As there was reported by Adam Stern on Monday morning that NASCAR Holdings leadership is talking with its IMSA sports car property about working together on a future race event in which both series compete. Now, IMSA and the Sports Car Series, it does need to be noted that NASCAR technically owns and NASCAR Holdings technically owns IMSA. Now, obviously, there was a lot of talk and conversation at one point about IMSA getting, or not IMSA, but NASCAR buying up the Long Beach Grand Prix not so long ago, and there were rumored speculation then that that's where that NASCAR IMSA event could end up taking place. What could this also mean? Well, this could end up meaning a couple things. Number one, maybe you could end up seeing a multi-class race, perhaps. There's obviously people who would love to see a NASCAR multi-class race. Maybe you have NASCAR Cup Series cars on the track at the same time. Maybe you have Xfinity cars on the track at one point, have a class tier, and have trucks on the track and maybe an ARCA division as well, kind of like IMSA does their class there. But I think most likely what this ends up being is a doubleheader between NASCAR and IMSA. Now, where you could end up having races, well, one of the potential possibilities is Road Atlanta. They, of course, have Petit Le Mans every single year, and I think a lot of fans would love to see NASCAR go to Road Atlanta. Actually, back in the late 1980s to the mid-1980s, there was a NASCAR Xfinity Series race that took place there, I believe, in 1986. So I think that it's very possible. And Road Atlanta, I think, would put on an amazing and great show, not just for the Cup Series, in my opinion, but for the Xfinity Series, and having on the same weekend as Petit Le Mans would be absolutely amazing and very, very huge. And you also could have that major crossover as well. Indianapolis also could be a possibility for the Battle of the Bricks, perhaps, but I'm not sure if that's going to be a possibility, because I don't think people want to see 2 weekends at Indianapolis. Maybe have the Battle of Bricks on Saturday, and then, of course, have the Brickyard 400 on Sunday, have qualifying and all that stuff on Monday, perhaps, but I'm not sure if that's going to be a possibility. Or maybe that's San Diego rumor. There's a lot of rumors about San Diego potentially hosting a street course race in 2026, or maybe we see the Chicago street race maybe get an IMSA event in 2025. Nonetheless, I think whatever ends up happening with this could lead to a lot of major headlines and storylines. And like I've already mentioned and said, you can end up having a lot of major crossover between both of the brands and both of the organizations. So again, I really hope this ends up happening. And yes, I know people, and I'm aware that NASCAR owns IMSA. They own a lot of different properties. They own ARCA, and they own a lot of tracks as well. We'll get to that here in just a short little bit. But I think it's really interesting that there's talk between IMSA. Maybe we also get to see drivers like Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain, Bubba Wallace, you name it. Tyler Reddick, for example, all go to IMSA and try it out there and do some of the IMSA racing. That'd be really phenomenal and great. But I think this is amazing to see that there's talk about this. I'd have to think the San Diego race that's been rumored for a while could be that potential date that ends up happening. We'll see if it does end up coming to fruition and end up coming true, potentially in the not-so-distant future. We'll keep an eye on this as the story progresses and goes on. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about 2311 and Finchum Motorsports and the lawsuit. As there was reported by Adam Stern on Monday afternoon, early morning, that some NASCAR industry executives have been discussing whether any of the 13 teams that signed the new charter agreement could offer to help cover part of the legal expenses. According to what Adam Stern has also reported, Finchum Motorsports and 2311 have declined to comment on this. In addition to that, it was reported on Monday evening that NASCAR industry executives are split when asked whether the lawsuit could affect the sport's momentum. And apparently, according to a team executive, they've actually been asked by investors about this, and some people in the industry know about this lawsuit going on. Now, NASCAR does have until today to comment on the situation and release a statement. Otherwise, there could be a lot more nasty stuff that comes along the way. Now, NASCAR has declared that they want to delay it, and NASCAR says they're going to not go for it, but they have till actually tomorrow to really make a major decision whether or not they're going to accept court, which I believe the court date is set for November 4th. Obviously, 2311 and Front Row are suing NASCAR, of course, Michael Jordan, all the people part of 2311, Denny Hamlin, you name it, everyone in Front Row as well, are asking NASCAR to really change the business model in major ways. Having Michael Jordan be part of this lawsuit and also having Jeffrey Kessler get involved with this lawsuit is absolutely huge. If you know anything about antitrust lawsuits, among other things, Jeffrey Kessler has been on top of it for many, many years and many, many times. He's actually been part of course, the NCAA when they wanted to pay out college athletes with the NILs, which, of course, money paid out to the names of the people and name, image, likeness, which is more money coming into those organizations. We also know the teams are expected to get more money in this upcoming charter agreement. We know NASCAR has basically sent out back and forth letters, so they are aware of the situation going on. Now, do I think that this is going to continue? Absolutely. The fact that we have the court date set for November 4th, which is, you guessed it, during championship week, that will probably, unfortunately, overshadow the championship. But let's be real and honest, I don't think a lot of people really care about the championship at this point, because the championship doesn't matter as much. But this story is going to continue to progress and go on as time progresses and goes on. And I think that some of the lovely gestures between both sides, I think it's going to get ugly once everybody ends up going into the courtroom. And I think it's going to get very, very spicy very, very quickly. So I would love to see this get resolved and both sides come into an agreement, but I do not expect that to happen at this point, to be honest. I think both sides are going to continue being nasty toward each other once they do get into the courtroom, once everything kind of falls through, and I don't think this lawsuit and court case is going to be done anytime soon. I think we're going to still be dealing with this court case and lawsuit, at least for the foreseeable, and at least for the long-term future. We'll see how it ends up happening, but it does affect a lot of people in this industry, affects other teams like Cindric and Gibbs and all that stuff. It'll be very interesting to see how things play out when it comes to this lawsuit going into the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about RFK Racing. Now, if you're on social media earlier today, you probably saw that RFK Racing is teasing a pretty big announcement for later today at around noon Eastern Standard Time and 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. Now, what could this announcement potential be for RFK Racing? There are two theories going on in regards to this. The first big theory, and a lot of people have seen this, is potentially just an announcement on Chris Buescher's Fastenal scheme for 2025. Because when you actually take a look at image and kind of zoom in just a little bit and look at the background of it and lighten up the image, you can see a Fastenal number 17 car showing up. Obviously, RFK Racing did put out a tweet a day or so ago indicating that they are expected to reveal some of their schemes for 2025, where I know that some of the 4 teams have revealed some of their schemes. Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Austin's 2025 schemes have been revealed, and we've been slowly but surely seeing some of the 2025 paid schemes. So that could be a potential possibility. Another thing that I have seen is this could potentially be a double announcement, where we do see a Fastenal scheme perhaps for 2025, or maybe this could actually be the rumored RFK announcement that has been going on for a very long time. If you have been paying attention over the course of the last year or so, or really actually the last couple months, there has been rumors and speculation RFK Racing is going to expand to a 3-car operation in 2025. They're expected to acquire a charter or get a charter lease out from Rickware Racing going into next year, while Rickware Racing will still be a 2-car team most likely in 2025. So big question you're asking, who is this driver of the number 60 car? The driver everyone keeps hearing, including myself, is Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece is expected over here. Now, how is this possible? Well, Kroger is expected to leave JTG Doherty Racing at the end of this season and go over there in 2025. And with how much money inventory Kroger has, they're going to want a 3rd car. So they're expected to suffice, and they'll pay for the charter bill going into next year. I think this could be a major possibility of happening. And I do agree with a lot of people that Ryan Preece has not gotten really a fair shake in the NASCAR Cup Series. Yes, he's been part of teams like Stewart-Haas Racing and JTG Doherty, but let's be real, JTG Doherty Racing drove the 37 car, which was unchartered in 2021, and struggled because they didn't have the money that his teammate at the time, that being, I believe, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., was end up getting. And the other big thing to kind of look at as well is the other organization, SHR. He joined Stewart-Haas Racing in 2023. The year that Kevin Harvick failed to score a win for the first time since joining Stewart-Haas Racing, the year that SHR went winless. And then in 2024, they've kind of struggled. Of course, they're closing from Foley at the end of the year. And his teammates, of course, have signed rides for next year. Chase Briscoe going to Joe Gibbs Racing, Noah Gragson going over to Front Row. And, of course, we do know that Josh Ray is going to the Wood Brothers next year, replacing Harrison Burton. So I think Ryan Preece will be the driver of this team. The other big thing is look at some of the other silly season things. We know that 2311 is expected to have 3 cars with Riley Herbst as a driver despite the situation with the charters. We obviously do know for a fact that we're expecting that Zane Smith will go to Front Row next year in a 3-car team. There have been talks about McAnally Hogeman Racing perhaps, but I think that we'll see Zane Smith there. Bubba's signed in recent weeks, and there's not a lot of big-name rides left available currently for 2025 in the NASCAR Cup Series, but the Xfinity and Truck Series are still going to be very interesting. But I think there is a very strong chance and a really great possibility that the big announcement from RFK Racing could most likely them officially announcing their 2025 lineup, the final driver of their team. We'll see what they end up announcing officially for 2025 tomorrow afternoon. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Alex Bowman. There was a lot of talk and speculation around whether Hendrick Motorsports could potentially appeal Alex Bowman's disqualification after the Charlotte Roval. But it's officially confirmed by Hendrick Motorsports, and we discussed this on the channel on Monday afternoon, that they will actually not appeal Alex Bowman's disqualification from the Charlotte Roval. Let's go back a couple days ago. It was announced after the NASCAR Cup Series race had concluded that Alex Bowman had been disqualified after the Charlotte Roval. He unfortunately failed post-race tech for not having enough minimum weight in the car. It was too low in weight. Now, Hendrick Motorsports did state in a statement originally on Sunday night that they were looking at the situation and they had to decide whether or not they were going to appeal. Well, Hendrick Motorsports did release a statement in regards to the situation, basically saying that we did not have enough evidence to go ahead and overturn the situation, and we will not appeal it, meaning that Alex Bowman, unfortunately, has been officially eliminated from the playoffs. This means that Joey Logano, who originally was not in the round of 8, will now end up making the round of 8. Obviously, I kind of gave my thoughts of the situation. I'm definitely a little bit shocked that Hendrick Motorsports isn't even trying to appeal the disqualification. Here's why I say this. I think Hendrick Motorsports absolutely should have tried to appeal this disqualification. Look, I understand that there probably wasn't going to be a great chance and opportunity. But a reason I think they could have honestly tried to appeal the disqualification, even though they may not have been cheating and might not have been able to win, is there's a lot of money on the line. And I actually honestly agree with some people saying that if it was Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, or basically William Byron, I actually do think they might have tried to appeal it because they've actually had a really good track record on winning appeals. 2 years ago, William Byron had an appeal after basically getting into Denny Hamlin in Texas, and he actually ended up winning his appeal. While the fine got bigger, William Byron got all his points back and was also able to get into the round of 8 because of it. Then last year, he had all the Louver situation and the Louver gate. And Hendrick Motorsports, all 4 cars received 100-point penalties. Guess what? All 4 cars end up getting those penalties rescinded, and all their points were given back to the team, despite probably the fact they should not have been able to get it back at that time. So I am a little surprised to see that they are not appealing it. Now, maybe the video evidence has surfaced that was going around where Alex Bowman did jump the curb, and I have to think that resulted in a little bit of damage for the organization. I do think that might have done enough to overturn it, but I didn't think they were going to have a really great chance and opportunity because we've seen other teams try to do the same thing. Justin Haley had lost in minimum weight earlier this year at COTA, and unfortunately was not able to go and appeal it and win it. Same thing with Brad Keselowski 2 years ago at Martinsville. He basically had a weight issue. They didn't appeal it, and they didn't go after it. So I guess that's a black and white rule. I feel bad for Alex Bowman fans in this situation. Alex Bowman had done everything right. He has done an incredible job this season as a driver. And even Jeff Gordon said today that they were embarrassed by the mistake. But again, I feel terrible for Alex Bowman fans. Alex Bowman has been through the ringer as a driver. There's been all this talk and speculation by a lot of us that he was going to lose his ride at some point, was going to lose his ride at the end of the year, and Justin Haley or some other driver like Roger Crew or Corey Day is going to take his seat. And obviously that's not happening because he performed exceptionally well. And he deserves to be in the 48 car, in my honest opinion. I think the speculation is complete nonsense. And then he's been doing so well, performing at an exceptional rate. He's done really good, and he's one of the most underappreciated drivers in NASCAR. Is he as good as Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, or William Byron? No. But he's a very solid driver. And if he is a top driver of one of these organizations, he would absolutely be loved. So I think that while I feel bad for Bowman, he should be proud of everything he was able to accomplish. As for Joey Logano, let's transition him for a second. Joey Logano, in my opinion, is the least serving driver in the round of 8. Look, Joey Logano did nothing wrong and did everything he had to do because of this. But Logano was not originally in the round of 8, and I think a lot of people will agree that Joey Logano probably should not have been in the playoffs. He got in the playoffs because he had 5 overtimes to get up there in Nashville. Let's be real, he wasn't deserving of that win in Nashville Super Speedway. That being said, Logano's done everything he can. It's an even year, so if you're a Logano fan, you should be happy because Joey Logano now has a chance and opportunity to still win a championship despite originally not having a shot there. Nonetheless, I do feel bad for Alex Bowman and Alex Bowman fans in the situation. I'm glad to see this kind of situation has been resolved, but honest to God, I do feel bad for Bowman fans because they've gone through the ringer and they don't deserve stuff like this, in my honest opinion. Been a tough break for this team in recent weeks, so Bowman's been doing an exceptional job this season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next major story of today's episode as we're talking about Spygate. Now, this absolutely shocked me, but it was reported by Jenna Fryer from Associated Press yesterday that a Joe Gibbs Racing engineer has been sharing setup information with a team that is not in the playoffs. None of their cars end up making the playoffs this year. Now, it does need to be noted by Jenna Fryer that this engineer from Joe Gibbs Racing is in a contract year and is looking for a job going into 2025 at the moment. Apparently, he has been talking to 6 organizations. Now, this engineer has not been named. NASCAR, according to Jenna Fryer, is aware of this situation, and they said, however, that unless the organization decides to sue the other organization for setup information and legal action comes into place, they will go ahead and not do anything until that comes out. Which, judging by the fact that this report came out very, very recently, tells me we're probably getting a lot closer to that, and then NASCAR will have to step in when it comes to this. Now, there's been a lot of speculation on these teams because this means that organizations like 2311 are off the hook because 2311 had a car in the playoffs, that being Tyler Reddick. It could have been Bubba Wallace this year had he had enough points or gotten a win. RFK can't be one of these teams because Roush Family Keselowski had one of their cars in the playoffs this year, that being Brad Keselowski. And then, of course, Trackhouse had a car in there. Hendrick had a car in, or all four of their cars in. JGR had all four of their cars in the playoffs this year. So it can't be one of those teams, or Team Penske, for example. It can't be them. So what organizations that have multiple cars could have been getting shared setup information? Well, one of those teams could have been an organization like Spire, perhaps. Though I don't think Spire is a team. Spire does have 3 cars that did not make the playoffs this year, but I think they legit have speed and a lot of money coming in to make their organization faster. And they're getting a lot better very quickly. So I don't think it's Spire Motorsports. Some have said Legacy Motor Club. I don't think it's Legacy Motor Club either. If that JGR engineer had been sharing setup information with Legacy, they need to get that money back, in my opinion. Now, it does mean also that they were getting cash considerations and trade-offs and all that kind of stuff. Now, the team that a lot of people are thinking of, and I believe this to be the possibility as well, is Richard Childress Racing. Now, a couple months ago at Richmond Raceway, we know Austin Dillon got his first win in nearly 2 years. And a lot of people at the time, including myself, were wondering, where did RCR and Austin Dillon get this speed from? Well, at the Michigan weekend, Ty Gibbs had some very interesting comments. His big comment that really didn't get a lot of traction until now is he was questioning where Richard Childress Racing got that speed. He thought it was super fishy. Since the Olympic break, RCR went from a team that really did not have the pace or speed to being one of the fastest organizations on the track. Kyle Busch went from a driver that didn't really have a chance and opportunity to compete for wins to having a chance and opportunity to win multiple races and getting close to winning victories. The only type of track really this year where RCR has been fast before the Olympic break was the super speedways, where Kyle Busch, to be fair, could have gotten a couple wins there. And he did have a couple races from time to time. He was quick, but he wasn't fast on a week-by-week basis. This is wild if it is truly RCR. The fact that Private Porno, who's generally been really accurate with the information that they have received, kind of quoted that kind of stuff, tells me that it's RCR, and I had someone tell me this from a couple people that told me this as well. I also have a little bit of another theory behind this story as well. Kyle Busch used to drive for Joe Gibbs Racing. And I remember this a couple months back where there was a lot of talk about Kyle Busch maybe wanting to go back to Joe Gibbs Racing. He'd been frustrated with RCR at the time. I wonder if that JGR employee, that engineer who's been working as an engineer at JGR for a long time, I'd have to think he was sharing that information. Now, this could all be speculation, right? There could be another team that we don't know is getting that information. Maybe it is Spire. Maybe it's Legacy. Maybe it is a team like JTG Doherty, perhaps. But I think it's RCR. Again, RCR has had a lot of speed in recent weeks, and it also is known that this is common knowledge in the garage, that RCR most likely is the team. Joe Gibbs Racing, like I said, could sue for this information. This is almost like what happened with Andretti and Rahal in IndyCar. If you know the story between both of these organizations, basically a former Rahal employee who formerly worked at Andretti Global was getting information shared between both parties. The FBI actually raided Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing's IndyCar team. And that's one of the reasons why Alexander Rossi did not end up going to RLL Racing for 2025, because he was supposed to head there and replace Christian Lundgaard, basically be a trade-off in certain instances. That, of course, did not end up happening. So now you've got another situation of Spygate. Now this is absolutely wild because Joe Gibbs Racing is in the Fritz. It has a chance and opportunity to win a championship again this year. They haven't won a Cup Series championship in 5 years. They've got a good chance to do that this year. And now you've got the Spygate controversy going on at this moment. Sharing setup sheets in the next-gen era is not something that is really, really well liked by teams and organizations. And people in this industry frown upon that. So I do think that something is going to come from this in the future. I don't know if NASCAR is certainly going to get involved. I'm not really sure if they are. But I do think that there could definitely be some wild stuff that comes from this story going forward. As time progresses and goes on, we'll discuss this story more once more information does come out, as I think a lot more crazy stuff is coming out in the future. We'll see how this story plays out as time progresses and go on. But like I said, I do think the team that was getting the information was Richard Childress Racing. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Hailie Deegan. Now, I did a story on this channel earlier today or yesterday when you're watching this video, but it was confirmed that Hailie Deegan will not be returning to NASCAR in 2025. Instead, she will be transitioning to open wheel racing starting in 2025 as she will join Indy NXT next year. She will join H&D Motorsports in Indy NXT and drive the number 38 car, which is a number that's been synonymous with her in her racing career in the past. Hailie Deegan, of course, halfway through the 2024 NASCAR Xfinity Series season, had been fired from AM Racing and left the organization. She had a 2 to 3 year contract, from my understanding, with AM Racing, but unfortunately that deal fell through. I also do think her deal with Ford has unfortunately ended up coming to an end. Hailie Deegan, of course, had a very decent NASCAR career. Well, not a decent, actually, excuse me. She did not have a really good NASCAR career at all. There was a lot of hype around her in the ARCA West Series. She, of course, did win 3 ARCA West races over the span of 2 seasons. Then, of course, she went in 2020 up to ARCA full-time and joined Ford's development program, and it never worked out for her. She did get a runner-up finish in a couple top 5s throughout the year, but she just never ended up doing really, really well with the organization. And then she moved up to trucks in 2021. And let's be real, it was a very big disaster year. In the next couple years, it didn't go well for her at JGR Racing. Then she made that one Xfinity Series start for SS Greenlight Racing with Stuart Haas Racing and Sport. And she actually had a really good run, finishing in 13th place. Then she moved up to the Xfinity Series full-time with AM, and it just never really worked out. Now, to her defense a little bit, AM Racing, since she left the organization, that organization has not ran well. They have struggled immensely. Only Joey Logano has gotten in top 10s, and other drivers like Josh Berry, Dylan Lupton, of course, other drivers at the team like Logan Bearden and Lost Allen, who's rumored to be going to a second AM Racing car for next year, by the way. They have really struggled in that team. Now, they're going to be getting Harrison Burton in 2025, where I do think Harrison Burton will do a solid and a pretty all-right job with this organization, hopefully, next season. I would really wish Hailie Deegan's career could have panned out because I think it would have been really good here. Now, let's talk about her going to Indy NXT. This is a pretty huge deal for Indy NXT to have her in the series. She did a Formula 3 test not too long ago on her YouTube channel a couple months ago, and it's no secret that she had been talking to Andretti at Iowa Speedway during the IndyCar weekend there. That was kind of a story that kind of went under the radar. She has been doing some open wheel racing course at Millbridge Speedway, but sprint cars are definitely different than Indy cars. She is going to run a Formula 4 race, I believe, during the COTA weekend this weekend. It basically in the Indy Feeder Series, be teammates with somebody, and she'll get a little bit of experience there. There's also an IndyCar test that will be taking place for Indy NXT drivers on Friday, October 18th, right before they have the race on the 19th or 20th that said weekend. Now, do I think Hailie Deegan is going to do amazing in Indy NXT? I really hope she can, but realistically, I don't expect her to really do much in 2025. Look, she is there because of money. Let's be real and honest. H&D Motorsports is one of the top organizations. Henry Malukas, who is Dave Malukas' father, he basically is very, very, very good at bringing a lot of really big name people there. And I believe that Louis Foster drove for HMD Motorsports this year in Indy NXT. He, of course, is moving up, and I think she's taking over his place for 2025. I think Hailie does have talent. There's no denying that. But she has struggled immensely. Again, there was talk about her going to, at one point, the Haas factory. I've kind of talked about this on the channel, but obviously that did not end up happening. Jay Show, Sheldon Creed, and Sam Mayer, better drivers, in my opinion. Sheldon Creed has the most runner finishes in NASCAR Xfinity Series history for getting a win, and Sam Mayer's won 7 races over the course of the last 2 years. It's a no-brainer, right? Both drivers have a chance to win championships with that team, while Deegan really wasn't going to do much. I hope she can do good with HMD Motorsports. My biggest worry is that she is going to struggle. Very few drivers have come over and race in Indy side of things and haven't been able to really succeed. Kyle Larson and Kurt Busch ran the Indy 500, and they're really the only exceptions who've done great. Maybe Carlos could have been one of those people too, who knows? But I do think and hope that she can do really good and can find something where she can be successful. And if she is successful in Indy NXT, That is really good for everybody, in my opinion. And I think it'd be a major success story if she can succeed in any NXT after not having a really good NASCAR career. Now, what does this mean for a NASCAR future? I'll be honest with you guys. I don't know if Hailie Deegan is going to come back to NASCAR in any way, shape, or form. Maybe she comes back in a one-off. I know that she had talked to Racer.com not too long ago before this announcement that she had been working on a deal to come back to NASCAR, but I think that's all been scrapped at this point currently at the moment. I really hope that she can be fully focused and stay focused on that side and do what she needs to do. I think she is a talented race car driver. I know, like I said, she has struggled. And I really hope that people helping her over there. I think Michael Andretti gave her a ton of advice, and Mario Andretti even tweeted, congratulating her coming over. I really hope she can be successful and run very well. Again, I'm just really nervous and worried that it's not going to work out for her, and there's going to be a lot of criticism heading her way. Somewhat justified, somewhat maybe unjustified, but I do think the lack of open wheel experience will unfortunately end up catching up to her, and that is very, very concerning. So I hope she can succeed. I want her to do very, very well, but I do not think that she is going to do very well in IndyCar in year one or in the NXT series. Again, we'll see how it ends up going and see how it ends up playing out. It's just been frustrating to watch how her career flounder at this point, unfortunately. Oh, she can do really, really well, but sadly, I don't think it's going to go well for her. I think there's some big struggles coming the way of Hailie Deegan in the NXT series, sadly, in 2025. Glad, though, she does have a ride and somewhere to race in 2025. So, that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support on Patreon as well. List description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. You think Hailie Deegan is going to do well in the NXT or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And more thoughts about the Spygate scandal going on between JGR and potentially RCR. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. There might be some big content dropping later today. We'll have the Xfinity Series race picks, of course, for this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. We also will tomorrow on the channel, of course, have the race picks for the South Point 400 and, of course, the paint skin video as well. And then, of course, on Friday, we'll have a NASCAR news video discussing over the course of the last couple of days. And I think I'm also going to do reactions maybe to Xfinity Series qualifying for Vegas, so you might see that on the channel as well. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.